So Trump's deportation plans are making everyone nervous. He isn't going easy on illegal immigrants. But when it comes to China, Trump seems to have had a change of heart and a clear change of tone. He is no longer threatening tariffs on China. Instead, he's talking about a trade deal.
We'll also pass the Trump Reciprocal Trade Act, meaning if China or any other country is charging us 100 or 200% tariff or tax, then we will charge them 100 or 200% tariff or tax in return. In other words, it's an eye for an eye.
We have one very big power over China, and that's tariffs. And they don't want them, and I'd rather not have to use it.
It is a complete U-turn from 200% tariffs to a trade deal. A few weeks ago, a trade war seemed inevitable. Trump picked a team packed with China hawks. He himself announced plans to raise taxes on Chinese imports. But as he completes 1 week in office, Trump is yet to act on these threats. Instead, he's talking about cutting a deal. And he's said to be keen on visiting China soon. The US president is making clear overtures and Beijing is responding.
In terms of foreign trade, we do not pursue a trade surplus. We are willing to import more competitive and high-quality products and services from abroad to promote balanced trade development.
That was addressed to Donald Trump. The Chinese vice premier spoke about balancing the trade relationship. He addressed Trump's biggest concern. Trump often says that China is stealing from America, that the current trade relationship benefits China alone. So Beijing is now talking about balancing trade ties and, by the looks of it, averting a trade war. But with Donald Trump, you never really know for sure. It's like his policy depends on his mood. So no fight today, but there's no telling what tomorrow will bring, and Beijing understands this. Trump is impulsive and sometimes incoherent. Even as he talks about a trade deal, he hasn't dialed down his rhetoric.
How much will the
We're thinking about that too. We're talking about a tariff of 10% on China based on the fact that they're sending fentanyl to Mexico and Canada.
How soon? How soon on those tariffs?
Probably February 1st is the date we're looking at. For Mexico and China, we're talking about approximately 25%.
It is hard to predict what Donald Trump is going to do next. So China only has a narrow window to strike a deal with Washington. Because let's face it, China needs this deal more than the United States. The US is China's biggest export market. In 2023, the US bought Chinese goods worth over $500 billion. Donald Trump's tariffs are meant to target these very exports. And China's struggling economy cannot afford additional taxes. It cannot lose the US market. American companies are already rethinking their presence in China. A record number of them want to leave. That's the finding of a new survey. It was published by the American Chamber of Commerce in China. This survey establishes a growing trend of foreign companies wanting to leave China. 30% of American companies in China are said to be unhappy. They're exploring alternatives for the supply of their goods and for their manufacturing facilities. Some companies have already moved out, others are working on an exit plan. In 2020, just 15% of the companies wanted to shift from China. 5 years later, those numbers have doubled. So what is driving this trend? Why do American companies in China want to leave? One big reason is the trade tension, the unpredictability around US-China ties, especially on the trade front. So companies want an exit. They don't want the risk. But where will they go? They're exploring other Asian nations, and de-risking from China is back in focus. This is a term that was mainstream during the pandemic when the world's overdependence on China left many countries without essential supplies. So governments and businesses started rethinking their supply chains. Instead of leaving China entirely, they moved some of their facilities out, and emerging markets benefited from the shift in the first round. Countries like Vietnam and Malaysia. They benefited. India too was part of this conversation, but New Delhi was slow to capitalize on these opportunities. Now, India has another chance, with another exodus from China underway. Indian businesses are looking to make gains, specifically Indian exporters. They want to expand their presence in the US. They're holding talks with trade organizations in America. And which sectors stand to gain from this? Textiles, leather, chemicals, electronics, auto parts and toys. These sectors have significant potential to grow. They can generate more business in the United States, and India must take the long view on this. It should incentivize Indian exporters. If trade talks between China and the US fail, India should be ready to capitalize and position itself as a strong alternative.
From breaking news to the day's biggest controversies, shedding light on the world's top headlines, detailed analysis on the stories that matter the most to you. Catch it all on Spotlight at 6 p.m. India time and 12:30 GMT, only on Firstpost.